They were there to greet and welcome fans returning to the ballpark. They were there to sing happy birthday to a very unexpected Phillies fan. Some are still getting ready for opening day, but on the field, the Gloves looked ready on more than one occasion. The final tune-up comes next. Casual encounters with their favorite players are happening all over the ballpark this weekend because today is the second of two on-deck series games against the Toronto Blue Jays. The Phillies wrap up spring training and now look ahead to Monday's opener against the Atlanta Braves. Today, it's a matchup against the Jays. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom McCarthy, joined by Chris Wheeler. A beautiful afternoon for baseball here this afternoon here at Citizens Bank Park, and you hope it's kind of foreshadowing for the 2013 season for the Phillies. A season of change for the Phils, not only with their roster wheels, but also with the way they want to play the game this year.
Play it better, Tom. Last year, they were not a good defensive team. Fundamentally, they were not a good team. As a result, a lot of things fell apart when you factor in the injuries. Pitching and defense are so important in baseball. Michael Young worked really, really hard in spring training to be a good third baseman, and they think he's going to be just fine. Last night, there were some good defensive plays. Wind was blowing out towards right field a little bit. John Mayberry had some trouble, then went back and made a really nice play. Now, when you want to see defensive plays, who's better than this guy? Freddie Galvis just makes one great play after another. It doesn't matter where the guy plays. That was a play late in the game at shortstop. You see Jonathan Papelbon's reaction. Phillies, the last 6 seasons, they were a very, very good defensive team. Last year, they weren't. Kind of mediocre, ranking 8th, and that really doesn't count all the missed cutoff men, guys that moved up, and mistakes they made that weren't errors. So they're looking to correct a lot of that this year.
Yeah, Charlie Manuel the other day even said that statistically you wouldn't see this, but how about the plays in the outfield last year? He said they really need to shore that kind of defense up going into the season. Now today, the Phillies will get their second look in a week at Josh Johnson. And if the second look is anything like the first look, he's really good.
You know, he's trying to remake himself a little bit. He isn't quite the power pitcher he was before. But this guy, arguably, a few years ago, you talk about the top 5 in the whole game, he had to be right there. Right now, he's at age 29. He was a 4th-round pick by the Marlins his first year here with the Jays. That's how many games he started, but he's had a lot of arm problems over the last couple seasons. Led the league in ERA at one time. And watching him the other day in Dunedin, his fastball is around 91, 92, 93. It used to be probably 95, 96. This is the game he pitched against the Phils last year. A heavy fastball. He can throw a 4-seamer when he wants to. Has a good changeup. Also will throw an excellent curveball, too, once in a while. This guy is still a quality pitcher, and maybe will have a big year for the Jays, but he certainly was a good acquisition for them.
He was kind of a throw-in in the deal between the Marlins and the Blue Jays. Pretty good throw-in if you're the Toronto fans. So it is the final day of the preseason for the Phils. The final day of spring training. One of the good things about going around the ballpark is seeing your favorite Phil, but it's also coming to the ballpark with the bright sunshine. The finale is next. Phillies baseball is brought to you by Citizens Bank, where good banking is good citizenship. Isn't it time you experience good banking? By Xfinity, the official HD triple play provider of your Philadelphia Phillies. And by Toyota. Every new Toyota purchase comes with Toyota Care. Let's go places. Toronto Blue Jays before they hit the road and head to Atlanta for the first 3 games of the 2013 season. Esperdal has been busy the last couple of days. Let's take a look at the starting lineup for the Jays. It begins with Jose Reyes at shortstop, Melky Cabrera bat second, followed by Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion. Adam Lin's at first base today, Colby Rasmus back in center. And the bottom third of East Torres Blanco and Emilio Bonifacio. And they'll face Phillies right hitter Kyle Kendrick, who has thrown pretty well so far this spring, Wheels. His ERA a little high, but that's just because of 2 in particular starts.
Yeah, that's spring training. A lot of guys come out of spring training with high earned run averages. And, yeah, they're pleased with Kyle.
First pitch of the day is hit in the air foul down the left field line. Dominic Brown gives it a look, but it's out of play. So we're underway. The count is no balls and 1 strike.
He's gone to that cutter or that fastball sinker changeup next. Everybody knows he started that about the middle of last season. Been very successful with it. Still uses his cutter, but not the way he used to. He'll use fastball, which is a sinker, and a changeup.
Next pitch is hit in the air to left field. This one is in play for Dominic Brown. One away here in the first. Last night's game was a very crisp 2 hours and change. The Blue Jays will be heading home after this ball game, so they're probably going to be swinging pretty early at some fastballs if they're in the strike zone.
Oh, you can probably be the exhaust on the buses will be wafting through here pretty soon, because this is one of those days where the Phillies are ready to go home, enjoy tomorrow with their families, and then head to Atlanta, and the Blue Jays want to get up to Toronto.
Melky Cabrera is the hitter. Cabrera, .349 this spring, and he takes a strike. It's 0-1. 14 RBIs. Coming off a year in which he had .379 for half the season with the San Francisco Giants before he was suspended for violating Major League Baseball's drug policy. He was leading the league in hitting when he was suspended and led the league in hitting for most of the year. Here's the 1-1 pitch to him. In the dirt, 2 balls, 1 strike.
Players getting adjusted now to this cooler weather that you're going to have in April baseball, of course, especially when you play in this part of the country. And sometimes the balls feel really slippery on a day like this. See Kyle blowing on his hand then.
Kyle's hoping he has the same kind of success that Cliff Lee had in last night's ball game. Cliff was outstanding with 4 scoreless innings, 5 strikeouts. You see 55 degrees, a light breeze. Blue skies, some sunshine. Still sweatshirt weather, though.
Yeah, we have a new one on today. Or what would you call this? A pullover?
This would be a sweater.
Sweater. Thank you.
Swing and a miss and a changeup, and there are 2 outs.
There's a real good changeup. He established inside a little bit to Melky Cabrera, then throws that dead fish down and away. And that changeup has really helped him with these left-handed hitters.
And the fact that he has that much confidence in throwing this pitch, too.
Well, Tommy, he really had to exist because left-handed hitters were just wearing him out. And they had to convince him, Rich Doobie, Charlie Manuel, that you better use that changeup more and be confident in it, or you're not going to be able to pitch up here.
Jose Bautista swings at the first pitch, and he hooks it down the left field line. It's a home run right off the pole. I mean, as quickly as that ball came in, that's how quick he got out of here.
Well, they've hit 2 first ball fastball home runs in this series. And you know Bautista's going to be up there hunting for a fastball. And he got it and hit the pole.
Well, 1-0 Toronto here in the top of the first.
That was an easy one for Mike Estabrook to call down there.
6 home runs now this spring for Bautista.
And this one got out in a hurry. This is a duck hook headed out there. But it went out so fast that it was able to stay fair. It was trying to go foul.
It was. They'll bring Edwin Encarnacion to the plate. And it's inside. Encarnacion, a home run, 3 RBIs this spring.
Big man hits a duck hook like that. It's really hard to keep it fair.
That one's deep. That one's going to go foul, though.
Well, the difference in that one was it was an off-speed pitch. Probably a changeup or a cutter, and you could see him get way out in front as opposed to the fastball that Bautista got.
Phillies play Encarnacion to pull on the infield, as you would imagine. That includes Chase Utley, the second baseman, who's shaded toward the middle. And John Mayberry off the line at first. In fact, I think you could play just about every hitter in the Jays lineup to pull.
A lot of them. They swing early, and they they try to hit home runs like that.
That's what you would call a back legger.
Oh, boy, do they look for fastballs, and they want to hit the ball of the ballpark, and they have a great ballpark to do that.
Ground ball to third. Michael Young toward the line. Nice play. Long throw. Side is retired. But the Jays do strike first and a home run by Jose Bautista. On to the bottom of the first we go. It's Toronto 1 and the Phillies coming up. Josh Johnson is warming up on the mound. Let's take a look at the Phil starting lineup for this afternoon's ballgame. Leading it off at center field is Ben Revere. Jimmy Rollins bats second. Chase Utley third, followed by Ryan Howard and Michael Young. Dominic Brown is in left field. He'll hit sixth. Lance Nix seventh. John Mayberry makes the start at first base. He'll bat eighth. And batting ninth and catching is Eric Kratz. And Josh Johnson in his first year in the American League. His numbers this spring, well, they've been really good. Only one walk. In fact, he walked his first batter the other day when we were in Dunedin.
He pitched great. That was a game that John Lannon got hit so hard. The wind was blowing out. It was hot. It was a cold day, but the wind was blowing out in their ballpark. And Josh Johnson had great stuff. Heavy sinker, really good slider to the right-handed hitters. Mixed in occasional curveball, changeup, but he was throwing mostly fastball, slider, and he was very effective.
He'll face Ben Revere to start things off. Revere is finishing up a solid spring in which he's hit .322 with 17 runs scored.
They're kind of letting Johnson sneak up on people right now, putting him down fourth in their rotation. Are you kidding me? Fourth?
I think as the year goes on, you'll find him, well, if he pitches anywhere near the regular season, the way he's thrown in the spring, he's going to be back to a number one.
Yeah, when you watch it, he just does not throw as hard. Everybody talking about Halliday's velocity. Well, this guy doesn't throw as hard either, but these type of pitchers have other pitches and they can compete.
Line drive to left field. And Revere hits it hard, but one away here in the first.
You're going to see a lot of that with left fielders playing him very, very shallow and figuring he's not going to hit it over their head, so they're going to take away that hit in front of them.
Jimmy Rollins up for the first time. Rollins 9 for 34 this spring. That equates to a .265 average. Batting second again in today's lineup. Showed you Rollins' numbers against Josh Johnson for his career. He's one of the guys that has good numbers against Josh Johnson. Hitting over 300 against him.
They had a lot of battles at the Phillies. These veteran players on the Phillies with Josh Johnson.
Out to left field again. That one's not deep. And Melky Cabrera was not playing deep, so 2 outs.
Rollins, Utley, Howard, those kind of guys played so many games against Johnson when he was with the Marlins.
A nice round of applause for Chase Utley.
Excuse me, Tom Johnson was a pitcher that night. Of course, that Halliday threw the perfect game. And then they came right back here to Philadelphia after that, and he beat Halliday in a real close game.
He gave up an unearned run that night to give the Phillies and Halliday the victory.
Right. There's a misplayed ball in center field by Cameron Maben in that game.
Huntley hitting .279 this spring. Chase is a very good on-base percentage, though, this spring training. Partly because of the 9 walks. He has scored 11 runs. And it's 1 ball and 1 strike to him. Phillies will finish the spring training schedule either a game over or a game under 500. Or I guess they could finish with their second tie.
Yeah.
They are 16-16-1 coming into this ball game.
Spring training games do sometimes end in a tie, as the PA announcement goes in Florida.
Can have the same thing happen here today.
Exactly. This is still a spring training game.
Out to left field again. Melky Cabrera, instead of coming in, has to go back. So 3 fly balls to left, and Josh Johnson has a 1-2-3 first. 1-0 Blue Jays as we go to the second here in Philadelphia.
USA, Walker Johnson, comfortable style.
Oh! You got game, dude.
Some of the festivities going on around the ballpark these last couple of days. Jonathan Papelbon found himself in the ticket office greeting some fans as they arrived at the ballpark. It's pretty neat. It's a different look, obviously, these on-deck series games where you can see a guy out at one of the gates. You can see them all around the park serving food, doing different things. Cole Hamels last night was shooting off hot dogs.
Walked up to the ticket booth, and that guy looks familiar.
Adam Lind leads it off for the Blue Jays here in the top of the second. 1-0 Toronto. And 1 ball and 1 strike as that changeup is down low. Lind's had himself a heck of a spring. 356 with 2 home runs and 9 runs batted in.
Good looking swing. A little fooled on that one. Little change up, but
yeah, back-to-back changeups.
He's like a lot of these guys, and he can really hit fastballs.
Back toward the middle. Rollins, nice diving play. Hops to his feet, fires to first, 1 away. Lind does not run all that well. Rollins had plenty of time to stay composed to make that play.
Yeah, as a result of the fact that you say he doesn't run, this is how you have to know the game. He didn't have to do a big pirouette to try and get a lot on the throw. He knew he could pop up, turn, and throw because he had a slower runner. Now, if it's a real fast run, Jimmy probably would have had to do more of a pirouette, get rid of it quicker, and get the ball over there in a hurry.
Well, now with 1 out, It'll bring Colby Rasmus to the plate. Rasmus 7 for 43 this spring. And he fights it off, hits it foul over the third base dugout. Seven runs batted in, just a 163 average for Colby Rasmus.
Pretty good mix of right and left-handed hitters too, the switch hitters at the top of their order. That's why their lineup is probably has a chance to be so dangerous.
This is going to be interesting to see how they, how they're affected by being in the American League East. It's a down American League East this year. It's not the same one that we've seen in past years, but they have the chance under John Gibbons' watch to have a very successful year.
Right, because as you say, the Yankees, Red Sox are not the same. And then you look at Baltimore, obviously an improved team. The Rays are always good. They just play the game well. They pitch well, catch the ball, and do a lot of little things. So they're going to be right there.
Probably the biggest question for the Jays is just how good is their bullpen going to be. Just off the outside part of the plate, 2-2.
Because you look at their team, and with the DH especially, starters stay in longer. Starters could take them deep into games.
Now they have weapons, obviously, out of the bullpen, but guys are going to have to really step up and prove their worth after these starting pitchers. Swing and a miss and a changeup. 2 outs here in the second. Second strikeout for Kyle Kendrick. The Phillies made news today about their opening day roster, and for more on that, here's Greg Murphy. Murph?
Well, they did indeed, Tom, as we get a final look at the 25 guys that will be on the opening day roster. But as Ruben Amaro Jr. told us just a couple minutes ago, of course, that will change throughout the season. It always does. But they're counting as many as 15 new faces on the opening day roster, changes from 2012. Some of the late decisions, of course, was backup catcher, whether or not Steven LaRue or Roberto Quintero would be on the roster. Quintero got that final spot. Ender Inciarte, the Rule 5 guy out there in the outfield, he will be on the opening day roster. And we already told you Kevin Franzen, of course, and Freddie Galvis also on that roster. But a lot of tough decisions coming right down to the end for Ruben Amaro and his staff, guys.
Yeah, we saw Philippe Almont, who pitched last night for the Phillies, and he was battling for one of those final spots, and it looks like he got the nod over Michael Stutz for the opening of the season.
Yeah, and Ruben told us as well, guys, that we shouldn't look into that Stutz didn't pitch well. They just believe he needs to, go back down to AAA and get his consistency back. And Ruben made the point, look, we do not forget what Michael Stutz did for us 2 seasons ago. They just want to get him to get his reps, and, they believe he'll be back up here and helping this team at some point as well.
No doubt about that, Murph. You know that whatever roster opens the season is not generally the one that finishes the season.
It's fake. I'll take it anyway.
Well, Jonathan Papelbon had a busy day in the ticket office. He's not only making sure that the fans get their right change, he's also making sure that things aren't counterfeit wheels. He's looking out for society right there.
That was very nice. Hold it up to the light. You think Pap knew what he was looking for?
Yes, I do. I do.
You know what? He may.
Ryan Howard, the DH today, takes a strike. It's 0-2. That was pretty cool for some of those young fans to walk up to the window and see the eyes of Jonathan Papelbon staring back at him.
Those eyes will stare at you, too. You get those relievers' eyes.
Fastball swung on and missed, so the first strikeout for Josh Johnson. One out here in the second. Michael Young is coming up. It's a show with beauty, brains, and hilarious comedy. Join Leonard, Raj, Sheldon, Howard, Penny, and the rest of the gang on Philly's #1 comedy, The Big Bang Theory, weeknights at 7 and 7:30 on PHL 17. Now with one out, here's Michael Young. Michael Young with 4 doubles so far this spring. Has just the 1 home run. Had 14 runs batted in. I think one of the exciting things about Michael Young is what he can do in this ballpark.
Yeah.
Because he can hit it to all fields.
Should be a good park for him. Talking nice chat with Charlie before the game, just hanging out in his office with him, and he was talking about Michael Young, what he brings to this club. And one of the things is he really loves his attitude and the way he plays the game. And his clubhouse presence he brought up too. He said, I thought he could play third. I really didn't worry about that. He said, but you know, until you're around a guy and find out what they're like and all that. He's really high on this guy, Tom.
Well, so many people have said that. Ron Washington, his former manager, there was a great quote in a recent Sports Illustrated where he essentially said, and it was a long one, but essentially the gist of the quote was, the players here in Texas won't realize how much they will miss Michael Young until there's a problem, until there's something that needs to be dealt with, and someone else has to deal with it.
Well, and when you're around this and know what goes on in the clubhouse behind the scenes, that says so much. That's a great quote.
3-2 the count to Michael Young with 1 out here in the bottom of the second.
It couldn't have felt good breaking a bat like that.
Back to the box. Yeah, there have been a lot of thuds so far these couple of days.
Well, he mostly is keeping the ball down with his fastball, heavy fastball. They intentionally went up the ladder with Brian Howard there to strike him out on a high one. But Johnson is down in the zone just the way he was the other day and consistently keeping the ball in the middle of the plate. Now, that one probably ran back a little more than he wanted to, and that's why Michael hit it hard. And that probably was going to be a base hit, except it was a good play by Johnson. Big guy made a good play there.
Dominic Brown now the hitter with 2 outs, and it's 1 ball and no strikes as he takes that fastball up and away. Brown among the leaders in spring training, not only in hits, in runs, in home runs, in RBIs. Many of the categories, the significant categories.
Pitching a lot of these left-handed hitters away today. So there's fly balls to left field early on.
Taking 3-0, and it's on the outside corner. It's 3-1. That's probably the quickest fastball he's thrown. That was at 93 miles an hour. And who knows? Maybe by the middle of the season he's going to be able to get it up into the mid-90s.
Yeah, and he's doing just fine where he is.
Low ball 4, and Brown works out a 2-out walk. First base runner for the Phillies this afternoon, and only the second walk issued by Josh Johnson this spring. And it'll bring Lance Nix to the plate. Lance with 12 hits this spring. His average at 197. Ground ball toward first. Nice play by Lind. That's a fair ball, and the inning is over. 3 unassisted on the putout over at first base. Phillies leave 1 here in the second. 2 in the books on a nice day here in Philly.
you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
you little knucklehead.
Declan. Happy birthday to you.
Look how happy Gary and Larry have made Declan.
9-year-old Declan Robinson serenaded by the Sarge and Larry Anderson today for his birthday celebration. As Henry Blanco lines one to center field for a base hit against Kyle Kendrick to begin the third. How about Larry took more charge today?
He did. And hopefully that Declan will not wake up in the middle of the night talking about monsters under the bed after that experience.
Larry mixed in the knucklehead there for a little bit.
He had quite a look at his face meeting those two guys.
You know, the confetti was a little lighter today than it was yesterday.
Well, Larry requested that because it upset his jacket last night.
Well, it also upset the chair in here because it was all over Sarge.
Well, poor guy was out here in the hallway last night with a vacuum cleaner after Sarge walked in. There was so much confetti all over the hallway.
Here's Emilio Bonifacio with the runner at first, and he takes low and in. 1 ball and no strikes. Bonifacio, 19 hits and 67 at-bats. There's a confetti last night.
Well, that wound up in the hallway.
All over the place.
Yeah. Guy looked at me like, did you do this? And I went, no, it was the guy inside did it.
Rollins shielding his eyes from the sun. And 1 away here in the third inning. Henry Blanco back to first. Jose Reyes will be the batter. Friday, April 5th at 4:05, the Phillies open up their home schedule here at Citizens Bank Park. They wrap it up on Sunday the 7th against the Kansas City Royals with the IBEW Local 98 Ryan Howard wiffle ball set for fans 14 and under. Order your tickets now by going to Phillies.com.
Kyle Kendrick will have that start on Friday at 4:05 against the Royals on opening day.
Pretty cool honor.
Yeah.
You know, Cole Hamels gets the start on Monday in Atlanta. I think every pitcher probably dreams of starting an opening day. Cole certainly has, and then for Kyle to come back and start the game here at Citizens Bank Park, that's pretty special. Reyes takes low and in, 1-0. There's Cole Hamels, mustache and all. We'll have the pregame show on PHL 17 on Monday at 6:30. First pitch is scheduled for around 7:05. As Reyes takes a strike at the knees, it's 2-1.
Yeah, you lose track of the days during spring training because it seems that there's games every day, but this is Saturday.
Today is Saturday. Wheels. Tomorrow is Easter Sunday.
Right, and we open on a Monday, so it's really closing in right now. It's great to think about.
In fact, tomorrow night it'll be the Rangers and the Astros to open up the 2013 season. There's no trips to Japan this year for Major League Baseball, just a trip to Texas. Reyes slaps it foul over his dugout, and it's 3-2. Folks wonder with Jose Reyes, well, how's he going to be on the AstroTurf? Will he be able to stay healthy on that turf with all the leg issues he's had during the course of his career? And it's a good question.
Great point, because that stuff can take its toll. Saw it happen over the years.
Runner goes, pitches swatted foul off his foot.
You can hear him yell, ow. That's great. The last exhibition game, you're at that point and God, I'm through it. I'm feeling pretty good. And whack, right off your foot. Oh, that hurt. That had to hurt.
Runner goes again, and a liner toward the alleyway in right center field. Nick's on the run. He's not going to get there. It's a one-hop off the wall. Blanco never stopped, so he's on his way around third. Reyes into second with an RBI double, and it's 2-0 Toronto.
He's hobbling going into second, too. They may get him out of the game. He smoked that pitch.
7th RBI of the spring for Reyes. Big reason why the Dominican Republic won the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, trainer's going to come out and look at him, too, because he's really hobbling. That's a triple for Reyes a lot of times. if he really wants one, especially when Nix had kicked away from him a little bit. Henry Blanco, as Tom said, running on the pitch. So even though he's a catcher, he scored easily on that. Reyes and Almiron will stay in.
He may stay in right now, but he may not be in much longer after this. Joking around with Jimmy Rollins. Last time they'll see each other until maybe the All-Star game.
Yeah, they've been down a few roads together over the last few years with Reyes in this division.
Melky Cabrera struck out his first time up. Takes inside on a cutter. It's 1 ball and no strikes. Phillies normally play the Jays during interleague play. They will not have that opportunity this year. Outside, 2-0. Back toward the middle. That'll sneak into center field, a base hit. Reyes will coast home from second. It's an RBI single. And it's now 3-0 Toronto. So Kendrick's given up 3 hits in this inning. Yeah, that's 4 overall.
It was a good job hitting a changeup back through the middle, it looked like, by Melky Cabrera. A couple left-handed hitters hurt him here in this inning.
Seemed like he was running around third okay.
Yeah. Well, the way he went into second, you mentioned it, watching him go into second, that got the attention of the manager and trainer, too.
And now Bautista, who homered his last time up, down the left field line. They throw him a cutter outside. 1 ball and no strikes. John Lannon had been throwing in the bullpen for the Phillies. He'll probably be the next one out because this is the last chance for him to tune up for his first start, which is right now scheduled to be next Saturday. Phillies will go Hamels, Halladay on Wednesday, Lee, and then Kendrick on Friday, and Lannon on Saturday. Outside, 2-1.
Lannon was standing down in the clubhouse this morning. Look at that big picture, that great mural on the wall. It's a picture, is what it is, of the last out of the World Series and everybody congratulating themselves.
It is a great photo. You can look around and see all these different people in different spots.
I said to him, boy, you were involved in a lot of that stuff too. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you pitched in a lot of games that helped the Phillies get to with the Nationals get the division. He says, yeah. He said, I pitched that last game when they made that unbelievable double play. He started that day.
It was an unbelievable double play that was started by Jimmy Rollins.
Yeah, he remembered it right away. The ball Zimmerman hit up the middle. It looked like it was going to tie the game at the time, and then Jimmy turned it into a double play and the party started. And that's the year they went all the way. But John Lannon was certainly pitched a lot of games against the Phillies.
3-2 with 1 out here in the third. Cabrera is probably going to be off on this pitch. There he goes. And the pitch is low, ball 4. And that'll put runners on first and second with 1 man down.
Pretty good at bat by Bautista to take a 3-2 changeup, as aggressive as he is.
So Kratz goes out to chat with Kendrick, because they have to deal with Edwin Encarnacion now with 1 man down, and the Jays already up 3-0 here in the third. Encarnacion grounded to the third his first time up. It was a nice play by Michael Young over toward the line. Line drive, base hit to left center field. One run definitely is going to score, and it's going to go to the wall, so that means Bautista will score 2. Into second with a 2-run double is Edwin Encarnacion. It's now 5-0 Toronto.
Boy, these guys are going to do this to teams when the guy's off. And Kendrick's up in the zone in this inning. They will hit you.
Now Rich Dubé going out to the mound. Lannon had sat down. Whether he's ready or not, I'm not sure. This just may be a chat to try to get him through the inning. As Rich told us yesterday, the way he's looking at these starts is as it depends on how good the guys look.
See what these pitches are too. They're in the middle, and you pitch against a team like this in the middle of the plate. Now when you talk about barreling one, that's right on the barrel, and he smokes this ball to left center field.
A new baseball for Kendrick. Rich Dubé goes back to the dugout. 5-0 Toronto, and the batter is Adam Lind. He's the 7th man to come up in this inning. Lind hit one to shortstop, or really hit one up the middle his first time up. Jimmy Rollins made a fantastic play to his left to retire him. A couple of these pitches, though, are right just a tad off the inside part of the plate.
Yeah, they're close. They're being more patient than you think they would be, the way they are such a free swinging team. They're doing a good job. Good approach.
Alan Porter is the home plate umpire today. Wally Bell's over at first. Phil Cuzzy at second. Mike Estabrook around at third. Ground ball foul. First base side, so 2-1 the count. Now Kendrick by inning. Not too bad in the first 2, but 24 pitches here in the third.
He threw pretty good, looked like a cutter that time. Got it in on the batter on Lynn. Maybe a change up away now. Another cutter. They're whacking some ball off their legs in this inning. Some baseballs.
Do you think the big thing is, though, he's just up a little bit with these pitches?
Yeah, I think he's in the middle of the plate and he's up.
Charlie having a conversation with Freddie Galvis and Michael Martinez.
You'd love to hear that. That would just. There's no telling.
Freddie's always talking to people, though. You know,
Yeah.
It's funny. I came out yesterday. I was sitting having a conversation with Rich Dubé in the dugout.
Yeah, he's so friendly.
Well, and they like him too because they like talking the game to him as well.
And he loves to talk baseball. Freddie Galvis is just delightful to be around because he enjoys himself so much. So is his manager.
There's Ichiro, part of the athletic training staff for the Phillies. Up high, 3-2 the count.
Just not sharp right now. And this type of team, if you're not sharp, they're going to hurt you.
So Jimenez will start the throw in the bullpen for the Phillies.
Rod Nichols out there now as a bullpen coach to answer the phone this year. Get guys up.
Hit hard to the right side. Diving attempt by Utley, and it squirts off his glove. He'll stop Encarnacion at third. First and third with one man down. Figure that's going to wind up being a base hit for Lind.
Yeah, that was another pitcher was up too. Well, that was really up where you think he wouldn't even hit it.
MLB.com at bat is the #1 source for live baseball everywhere you go. Available for iPhone, iPad, Android, and BlackBerry 10. At bat delivers Phillies baseball with live audio, pitch tracking, stats, news, highlights, and more. Text at bat to 31826 or visit Phillies.com for more details. Colby Rasmus struck out his first time up. Phillies would love a double play ball here. Runners on first and third. Good changeup, 0-1.
Kendrick has 2 pitches to get double play balls when he's on. That one, you just called, Tom, the changeup, the guy may roll over, and a sinker. but he just cannot seem to throw it where he wants to at this point.
Back-to-back changeups. That one was up a little bit, but it was toward the outer half of the plate, and it's 0-2.
Erasmus, where he stands in the box, he's up so far he can intercept those if they're up a little bit before they get away from him.
Now the 0-2 pitch coming. Ripped down the right field line. Foul.
Really having trouble commanding a sinker ball today. See, he stands up in the box quite a bit. He's going to put a little protection on that shin foot area.
Swing and a miss. He gets it for a second time. Threw him another changeup. So the 8th man to come up in the inning is the second out for the Blue Jays. And here comes Mysoris Torres.
Yeah, that was a good one. Tom said it's a changeup. See the grip, and it dives with a couple strikes, gets him to chase. And there's where he steps way forward towards the front of the batter's box, almost out of it.
These Torres hit one back to the box his first time up.
Umpires a lot of time will look for that guy's back foot because it's right in front of them. But you don't see that very often where a guy's up that far.
No, nobody usually likes to bat that way.
That was better. That was one of the better sinkers he's thrown so far. That one really had some movement to it. Down.
Inning began with Henry Blanco's single to center field. He's on deck.
Now Kendrick right now trying to work. He's throwing sinker. And then that was just a cutter. See the pitches this inning. He's really struggled. Change up away, baby.
He did throw the changeup. It's 2-2. You know, the other day talking to Kyle about these last couple of starts, it was the cutter that he was really going to try to work on. We've seen it today, but we've also seen him, throw the bread and butter, which is the sinker.
Yeah, and he doesn't have much command of it today. They'll talk it over. They have a good relationship, Rich Doobie and Kyle Kendrick.
Out of play, and it remains 2-2. These Torres will be the opening day third baseman for the Blue Jays. It'll be a role which he will secure for at least the short term until Brett Lawrie comes back. Laurie's out with a strained oblique muscle for John Gibbons' squad. Swing and a miss. He got it with a high sinker. And the side is finally retired. 4 strikeouts for Kendrick. He allows 4 runs in the inning. On to the bottom of the third. It's 5-0 Blue Jays. today. Ben Revere meeting some of the fans. Charlie Manuel driving around some of the fans. That's a courtesy car that the Phillies have for fans in certain areas of the parking lot. Of course, Dominic Brown handing out some books to some of the young fans who came to the ballpark today. Dominic is a very engaging fella. It's going to be good for the fans to get to know him a little bit more around the yard. Ben Revere scouting out some speed. Trying to decide who's the fastest and who he might be able to use as the years move on. John Mayberry leads it off here in the bottom of the third. Phillies down 5-0. Imagine if you were a kid and you walked around and you saw Richie Ashburn at one of the gates at Connie Mack.
Be pretty neat.
John Mayberry slams one to left field. It's deep and it is gone. Second home run of the spring for Mayberry. It's a 5-1 ball game. John Mayberry is going to be part of the platoon, you would think, in right field with Lance Nix. So he's going to get some playing time, not necessarily against right-handers, but against lefties. But that's a pretty good swing against a right-hander.
And Josh Johnson throwing a lot of fastballs here today, and that was a sinking fastball. It was about belt high. Solid line drive home run for John.
Phillies have hit their share of home runs this spring. They've given up home runs too, but they've hit a good amount. Erik Kratz takes low, 1 ball and no strikes. Mentioned before, Kratz and Humberto Quintero will be the 2 catchers to start the year until Carlos Ruiz is done with his 25-game suspension. Kratz fouls it away. It's 1-1.
There hasn't been a whole lot talked about with Carlos, because what are you going to do about it? You know he's gone for 25 games. Will it hurt? You bet it's going to hurt. It's nice to have Erik Kratz get to the point where he is now, that he can do this, and a solid backup in Quintero with a lot of major league experience. But you don't have Carlos Ruiz at the beginning of the season and think that that's not going to make a difference. It does.
Not only offensively but also defensively, because the Phillies lineup will look even better when Carlos comes back. Nothing against Erik, of course.
He's going to go to Florida tomorrow, Carlos is, and be able to play down there, and then there'll be a point right before his suspension ends. He can go out into rehab, but at least he can play in games down there and get some work. That won't come up and hit him.
He's a tough guy, though.
He is, and he's really in good shape. That was one of those ones he wished he had that flap in the other ear.
No, that means he'd be down in Lehigh Valley.
Yeah,
then.
That's true.
3-2 pitch coming to Kratz. Low, ball 4. And now to the top of the order for Ben Revere. Second walk issued by Josh Johnson. Phillies baseball is brought to you by Thomas Jefferson University Hospitals. Call 1-800-JEFF-NOW for an appointment. And by Citizens Bank. Good banking is good citizenship. Now Ben Revere now the hitter. Revere flied out to left his first time up. He actually lined out to left. Hit it pretty sharply. And he swats it foul. It's 0-1. Revere has stolen 10 bases this spring. It's a lot of stolen bases for spring trading.
You talked to Charlie about him. He likes him so much as a player and really thinks he's going to help, but he really believes he's going to steal some bags because he wants to steal. If you're going to steal bases, you have to want to steal them because you get beaten up doing that. A lot of throwovers where you're going back in. A lot of balls hit you when you're going into second base. It's hard tags, sliding. Base stealers are tough guys.
Jimmy Rollins has been a base stealer during his career. The guy at shortstop for the Blue Jays. He went through a period last year where the Marlins were wondering, well, why the heck isn't Jose Reyes running? And part of it is, wanting to run and being healthy enough to run.
You have to want to do it because you will pay a price for that physically.
1-1 the count to Revere. Up the first base line foul. It's 1-2.
And there's something about, we talk about it all the time. Fans will ask you about stealing bases. Well, the manager put a sign on. Rarely do they put a sign on for a guy to steal a bag. That is really up to the guy. They give him the go, they'll put a hold on, but he has a green light all the time, and it's up for him to read the pitcher and decide to go, and of course make it a situation where you have a chance to steal.
Back toward the middle, that'll drop for a base hit. Kratz hesitated for a moment. It doesn't matter though. He'll get to second. So the last 3 hitters have reached base, including Mayberry on his home run. And the Phillies have 2 on with nobody out for Rollins coming up.
Just one last thing on stealing bases. The reason we talk about a manager putting a steal on, or the guy going on his own, when a manager puts a steal on, they really get a good jump. You know, they're just so aware of the fact that they have to go. They don't want to get picked off. When they're trying to steal a bag, more goes into it. And the first base coach, in this case Juan Samuel, is a big part of it.
I think the last few years that, you know, Charlie, we've talked about it on the air, how Charlie has wanted guys to run more. Whether it be Jimmy Rollins, whether it be Shane Victorino, and there were times where the guys just weren't running.
Right, give them the green light and let them go. Now, if they do dumb things out there, steal at ridiculous times or bad counts or score or out, you know, then you have to say, all right, look, we're going to talk about this and we're going to take that green light off.
1 ball, 1 strike to count to Rollins. He also flied out to left. His only time up. And it's 1-2 as he fouls it down the left field line.
Nice catch out there. That guy. Yes, you did make a good play.
That ball looks like a marble in his hand. Base hit to right field. Both runners froze just to make sure it wasn't caught. Kratz stops at third, Revere at second. The bases are now loaded for the Phillies and Chase Utley.
Like a breaking ball there that Jimmy hit from Johnson. All of a sudden they're finding some holes on it. Didn't throw a whole lot of curveballs last time. There it is. And Jimmy hooks it in the hole to right field. Tom said everybody going to base at a time, but you have to hold up there. And plus, you're down by 4 runs. That's 1 bag at a time.
Well, Pete Walker, the pitching coach for the Blue Jays, coming out to chat with Josh Johnson. Walker was the bullpen coach last year for Toronto. They've got themselves a good bullpen coach, too, and Pat Henkin, former Blue Jay.
Well, he's a good pitcher.
It's kind of a revamped coaching staff. Walker was part of it last year in a different role. Dwayne Murphy was part of it in a different role. They got DeMarlo Hale as the bench coach. Chad Mottola as their hitting coach. Chase Utley, the hitter, with the bases loaded and nobody out. And Utley takes a strike. It's 0-1. Started him with a changeup. Here's Pat Henkin.
That guy,
he could throw.
He really competed. Tough pitcher.
He could throw. In the air to left field. It should be deep enough to score Kratz. He's tagging at third. The catch is made. The runners hold up at first and second, but Kratz scores and the sac fly by Utley. It's a 5-2 ball game. Textbook for the Phillies, but also textbook for the Jays. For Melky Cabrera to get that throw into third.
Love to watch Revere run the bases. He did everything right there. Drifted a little bit, and then with nobody out, make sure he goes back. They get a right-hander up in the bullpen. He makes sure he goes back and tags up. He tagged up, and then he watched everything Cabrera did, and everything Cabrera did out there stopped him, that he knew he couldn't go to third. There's Reyes. Well, that foot still could be hurting him if he beat that ball with his foot early.
Ryan Howard takes a fastball outside, 1-0. Howard struck out on a high fastball his first time up.
But what I mean about Revere is if Cabrera at the end had drifted a little bit on that and
his
not come
footwork
forward,
was off.
Yeah, then he can go. But, you know, Cabrera caught that thing coming forward, and that stopped him. But he was ready to advance. One thing you notice about Revere when you watch him, he knows how to play.
That ball's hit well to left field. Cabrera going back toward the track to the wall, and he just has a sliver of room to make the catch.
What Ryan's been doing all spring, though, he's been driving the ball to left field and left center field. Just missed one there. I think he got that one down on the bat a little bit. Let's see if you can tell. Oh, he got on the end. Yep. And that's the difference right there in hitting it out or a wall ball or a warning track ball right there, right near the end of the bat. If he hits it on the barrel with that swing, ball's out of the ballpark here.
He thought there was a chance, too, that was going to go out the way he was looking at it.
Well, he knows he can hit. He's hit a lot out in that spot.
Michael Young takes away 1-0 the count. Phillies have scored 2. They have 2 on and 2 outs here in the third. A home run by Mayberry, a sac fly by Chase Utley. They've got speed on the base path, so a ball in the gap should give them 2 more. Out to right field. That one's pretty well hit. Bautista going back toward the wall, and it's off the base of the wall. They will score 2. Young will pull in the second. It's a 2-run double. It's a 5-4 ball game.
Great job by Michael Young. It looked like Johnson was going to get out of this with just one. With the bases loaded, nobody out. And Tom talked about this last night, or whether today, I'm not sure, that today that Michael Young, he's a guy that you're going to play him towards right and right center. He's always driven the ball well that way. And that's an example of it. As this pitch is out away from him, just drops a head on it, and he has some pop. And in this ballpark, he's just going to like hitting here. That was a fastball, ran right back to him. You don't know what day it is. I don't know if you said that last night or today. I knew you said it.
Is it all running together for you, Wills?
I was just trying to give a little attribution there, and I couldn't remember what day you said.
Thank you for hanging on my every word.
Well, I try.
Dominic Brown, the hitter. Brown walked his first time up. Phillies have set 8 to the plate. Here in the third, they've scored 4 runs. That one's pulled toward first on one hop. And Lind will flip to the waiting Johnson. Side is retired. Phillies, though, a little spark offensively. They leave one in scoring position, but they also score 4. It all began with John Mayberry's leadoff home run. That began the bottom of the third. It was the second one of the spring. And that's the spark the Phillies needed to pull within 1 as we go to the 4th. Monday, April 8th, the Phillies begin a 3-game series against the New York Mets. That first game, all fans 15 and over receive the McDonald's opening week t-shirt. Get your tickets now by going to Phillies.com. Check out all the Hatfield Dollar Dog Nights that are scheduled for the ballpark. The first one is Tuesday, April 9th. A lot of offense today, not so much offense last night. Phillies just scored 4 in their half of the third, so we go to the 4th. Ender Inciarte takes over in center field for Ben Revere. Taking over on the mound is John Lannon. He'll pick up for Kyle Kendrick. Lannon 1-2 with an 8.50 ERA so far this spring. Most of that damage, though, Sarge, was done this past Monday in Dunedin when the Blue Jays, as John said, just lit them up.
Yeah, well, he's getting that ball through the middle of the plate, kind of like that one right there to Henry Blanco.
Inciarte cuts it off and holds Blanco to a long single. So Blanco is aboard. Speaking of Ender Inciarte, just to give you a little introduction to him and what he's all about, let's bring in Greg Murphy. Murph?
All right, thanks very much, guys. Well, you know, he's been the topic of conversation for so much of the spring with that Rule 5 that he is a part of, and the Phillies really needing to make a decision whether or not they're going to keep him on the roster all season. Well, of course, Ruben was asked about that today when the final roster did come out, and it was very interesting. He compared Ender Inciarte to Freddie Galvis. He said he's kind of like the Freddie Galvis of the outfield. They really like his instincts out there. They like the way he runs to his routes out there in the outfield. They like his arm as well. And your defense in the outfield is going to be an issue at points this season, and they really think that he can help them. Now, Ruben went on to say he might be a little bit overmatched early on offensively, but they think that his upside and what he's able to do defensively can really help this team, especially in late innings in ball games. So Ender Inciarte is on the roster right now. We get a chance to see how he plays out there, but they really like this kid.
You know, the point that will be interesting, Murph, is when the Phillies need to make an adjustment to their outfielders at some point in April, because Delmon Young is scheduled to come back at some point. And that's when, you know, the pieces may be a little different with the makeup of this ball club. And I know you know that. I mean, Sarge, you and I have talked about that. He'll have a few weeks to kind of showcase himself to see if he can handle the major leagues a little bit.
Yeah, by then, too, those teams will all be set. Maybe, well, they're planning on keeping him. I mean, if he's here now, they're planning on, you know, making sure that he's going to be part of the organization there. I think what the brass is probably looking at is long-term, obviously, and trying to get a little bit younger. And here's a player with excellent speed, and Murph mentioned about the defense, and they're going to need that.
0-2 the count. Emilio Bonifacio popped out his first time up. That ball's in the dirt. 1-2. Delmon Young is still participating in spring training. He was officially placed on the Major League disabled list, or will be at the start of the season. And he'll be down in Florida continuing to take swings with some of the minor leaguers. He's been running the bases a little bit more. According to reports, ran the bases today.
Yeah.
Swing and a miss. A fastball, and Bonifacio's rung up. Murph, did Ruben talk anything at all about Delmon Young and what his status is?
Yeah, he did, Tom. He updated him, and as you said, still down in Florida. He'll be part of that extended spring training, but he said he believes it was April 2nd. He wasn't exactly sure of the date, but April 2nd, sometime early next week, that Delmon will begin playing in the outfield. And he hasn't done that yet, so he'll have a chance to play in the outfield and you know, see how that ankle feels out there. He'll do it in a limited role at first, but slowly work him in, and they think he's progressing very well as well. So, as you said, you know, when he's ready to go, it'll be interesting to see how this roster shakes out once again. But talk about adding another right-handed bat to this lineup in Delmon Young, it certainly can only be a plus.
Yeah, he's been running on his own with Scott Sheridan, Phillies athletic trainer, and the training staff that's down in Clearwater. And he's also been shagging during batting practice in the outfield. A little different than games.
Yeah, I think the time will come when he's able to cut, when he's able to slide on his ankle there. That'll be the test for him. But obviously, everybody knows this guy's a good hitter. You talk to them in Detroit, they talk about the same time. So anxious to see him play in this particular ballpark for sure.
I think he's anxious, too, to get back on a Major League roster and start to perform a little bit. It's watching him at BP, it looks like he's the old Delmon Young as far as the bat goes. Jose Reyes hits one to deep center field. Here's Inciarte going back on it. And he makes the catch. 2 outs. Well, Sarge, you were an outfielder. I mean, what have you seen from Ender that's caught your eye?
Well, he gets good jumps. I mean, he's very quick. I mean, fast. And guys that are fast, they can make up for errors. I mean, if they misjudge it, they're able to catch up on it because of the speed. A lot of times, guys aren't able to do that. You make one wrong turn, and you're not able to make sure you catch the ball. He can do that. Both sides he runs and has a lot of confidence. The other thing I like about him is that, you know, him and Ben Revere, they play shallow. And that's when they play shallow, you can take away potential base hits.
Also shows you have some confidence that you can read the ball and get back on it too.
Yeah, well, you can't do it without speed. And, you know, obviously he's played well enough to have earned a spot here so far, so we'll see how it goes.
There's a breaking ball for a strike. It's 0-2.
To win the division, you're going to need everybody on the roster at some point in time to contribute. So we'll see what happens.
Swing and a miss. He got it. So Ladden allows the leadoff single to Henry Blanco, but then gets the next 3 hitters, including in that a couple strikeouts. A scoreless fourth inning for John Ladden. Middle of the fourth. Phillies down 1. Xfinity, the official HD triple play provider of your Phillies. Kind of quiet out there in left field. Where you can see the lineup, Sarge, the starting lineups each day. You see them up there on the wall, in the back of the scoreboard, basically, back of Harry the K's. Those lineups are up. Every time somebody comes through the gate, they can look and say, okay, that's who got. He's starting there. He's starting there.
Well, I think that's great. A lot of time fans see some of their favorite players here in the lineup, so they'll know whether or not he is.
Lance Nix leads it off. He takes a strike from Josh Johnson.
Nick's getting a lot of playing time here this particular spring, and he's in tremendous shape.
0-2 the count. He's in great shape physically, and he said calf-wise, everything's fine, which is the injury that plagued him all of last year.
Well, him too. He's ready to contribute, but obviously something to prove after the year last year.
Fights off the 0-2.
Usually, it's a pretty good fastball hitter, and the type of guy that can come off the bench on a tough pitcher and deliver a base hit. Turned out to be a really nice day.
Yeah, yesterday wasn't a bad day. It got cool as the night rolled around. It was kind of like this.
Yeah.
Look at blue skies, a little breeze. Temperatures in the 50s.
Lefties want that ball up in the wind there, blowing out to right field or crosswind.
Ground ball foul. It's
kind of like what we're used to.
Certainly not back in Florida, Sarge.
Yeah, different uniform, a little warmer here, but more importantly, they know what the glove is for.
That's exactly right.
Just to block the sun.
Another ground ball foul, another opportunity. That one got away, though. It was a tough carom.
Yeah, they decided whether or not to backhand it or just go in and get in front.
Whole family's getting new baseballs. Two and two the count to Lance Nix. It'll be Nix, then Mayberry, at Eric Kratz, the bottom third of the Phillies order. Phillies will face Tim Hudson on Monday. You figure that Nix will be in the lineup if they're going to do a platoon out in right field between Nix and John Mayberry, with the righties on the mound to start. It'll be Nix. Lefty on the mound. It'll be Mayberry. Now that's not set in stone, but that's the assumption that the Phillies will use in right field.
Well, Charlie said for sure that he's going to get Nix a lot more at bats and see what happens with some of the other guys. I'm sure obviously Mayberry would be starting if it's a left-hander. It kind of gives you an indication, though, when he gets aggressive, he can hit the ball out of the ballpark or keep that ball on the line. They've been talking with him. Charlie has, Henderson has, the whole spring about being more aggressive at the plate. The rest is up to you.
3-2 the count. Now you're talking about John Mayberry.
John Mayberry.
Yeah.
Well, coaches can only do so much. The fact of the matter is, though, with John, he has the ability in him to be able to do that. Just think he needs to get a little more tougher.
In the air to right field, Bautista over toward the line. He makes the catch. I heard Nix's bat crack on that swing. And that's the first out here in the fourth after a 10-pitch at bat.
Yeah, got in on him. That's still, you would consider that a good at bat. And you say that because he hit that fly ball, got jammed, but he fouled off so many pitches, gave himself a chance to get a base hit. Give credit to Johnson, who made a good pitch inside on him, 3-2.
Mayberry homered his last time up. Second home run of the spring. Takes outside and low, 1-0. Well, I was watching, I can't remember which channel it was the other day, whether it was the MLB Network or if it was something else. I was watching the 1976 postseason, Game 5 between the Yankees and the Royals. And who did we see hit a home run in the first inning for the Kansas City Royals? But John Mayberry Jr.'s dad, Big John Mayberry, the elder statesman.
Yeah, tell you what, he never saw a fastball and let that fastball go by.
Tough play for Lind.
Yeah.
Ball was tailing away from him.
Tailing away, you got the wind blowing the ball away. He can't get over there quick enough. He's saying to himself, not the time to really get hurt. He didn't sell himself out all the way. But he gave it a good effort. That win there, that's a tough play. Would have been a great play if he had made it.
2-2 the count as Mayberry fouls it back. John Jr. and John Sr. are very different players. I mean,
well, yeah.
John Sr.'s a left-handed hitter.
Left-handed hitter, fastball hitter.
Little, not as slender as John, shorter than John Jr.
Yeah. Yeah, a little hefty, you would call that.
Well, you're friends with him. You can call him that.
Well, yeah. They were really good friends. Played in the Dominican. Just, again, thought it was such an honor to be able to play there. And Juan Marichal, who still lives there, Rico Cardi. See these guys quite a bit.
Swing and a miss, and there are 2 outs as Mayberry's down on strikes. That is just the second strikeout of the day for Josh Johnson. And that'll bring Eric Kratz to the plate. Kratz walked his first time up and then came around to score. on a sac fly by Chase Utley. Out toward right field. Bautista will have room toward the track, puts it away. Side is retired. Phillies go down in order for the second time this afternoon. We've completed 4. On to the 5th we go, with the Phillies down 1 to the Blue Jays. Office or by checking out Phillies.com. Groups of 25 or more receive special discounts and group recognition. There are many options for groups to take advantage of at the ballpark, including private suites and pregame party areas. Again, check out Phillies.com for more information. And we begin the top of the 5th. It's a 5-4 lead. The Blue Jays on top. John Lannon on in relief of Kyle Kendrick. Kendrick with the first 3 innings for the Phillies. And Bautista shoots one through the hole on the left side. So leadoff single.
This guy's going to have pretty good hitting ball club in that American League East. A lot of sports writers have picked them to win that division this year simply because the Yankees and Boston is down. And I'm sure Baltimore will have something to say about that before it's all said and done.
1-1 the count. That ball is shotted to the sweet level. That young lady in the right place at the right time, hopefully away from the ball as it's shotted to the sweet level.
Yep.
Inside corner for a strike. It's 0-2.
Well, that's a good pitch. When he pitches inside, Lannon has to throw that ball almost down and in off the plate some. He can ill afford to leave his ball down and in on the heart of the plate.
Sarge, what is the biggest obstacle you think the Blue Jays will have as far as the East goes?
Well, I mean, obviously, like most of the teams, it's to stay healthy, but they got some guys that can do a variety of different things. Encarnacion, coming off of his best year ever, he's up at the plate. Bautista, injured last year, he's got to show he can come back.
That ball's hit well to center field. Inciarte on the run. He's not going to get there. It's a one hop off the wall. Bautista's being waved home. The throw by Utley coming to the plate is going to be cut off, and they hold Bautista late.
Wow.
So a single and a double, and it's second and third.
Well, speed or no speed, no chance to be able to catch that ball. Just a solid line drive. Take a look at it. Boy, when you get that, it's about a perfect swing as you can do as it goes in to center field. Line drive, like, plays that well as he catches it one hop off that wall there. Anytime you can keep them from not scoring, you've done a good job when the ball hit out deep in the outfield.
Adam Lynn takes outside. It's 1 ball and no strikes. All right, defensively, the Phillies have Mayberry even with the bag at first. Young's back behind the bag at third. That's the offside of the hitter. And the middle infielders are back. Since it's just a 1-run game, there's still time. You kind of lay it out there what it would be like during a regular season game.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, depending on who's coming up and what batters are being able to drive and hit the ball there, they play it in or play it back. They're playing it back now because they feel they can score some runs. And by playing them back, you can cut off balls potentially that might be hit up the middle. If you're up, those balls are through. Automatically, you're going to score 2 runs.
Popped him up. They're pointing every which way. It'll be Rollins who takes charge. That's what you were talking about before about where Lannon needs to be with his pitches. That was in a really good spot.
Yeah, he's got a pitch. We've seen him pitch before. And, you know, again, he's the type of pitcher that he's a control pitcher. Not going to strike out a lot of batters. His key is to kind of stay ahead and have the hitters hit his pitch.
Colby Rasmus takes a breaking ball for strike 1. Rasmus is 0 for 2. He has struck out twice today. Blue Jays jumped out to a 5-0 lead. The Phillies scored 4 in their half of the third. Ground ball right side. A run will come home. The out will be recorded at first. And over to third goes Edwin Encarnacion. So it's 6-4 Toronto.
Tried to get in on him to jam him. Didn't hit the ball very hard, but hit it in a good spot. Very effective. A lot of times, too, in those situations, yeah, you want to get a hit. Most important thing to be able to drive that run in. Game still very manageable, only 2 runs down.
Slowly hit up the third base line and it'll trickle foul. So it's 1 ball and 2 strikes now to Myzeri's Torres. The other part of the Blue Jays lineup that's missing is Brett Lawrie, and when he comes back, that adds another big piece offensively. I mean, they've got some pop all the way through.
Oh, no doubt.
Lance Nick settles under it. A 1-run inning for the Blue Jays. 1 run on 2 hits. They leave 1 over at third. Middle of the 5th inning here in Philadelphia. The Blue Jays on top 6-4 over the Phillies. deck series, we talk about anywhere you go around the ballpark, you could be surprised by your favorite Philly player. How about up in the suites where Roy Halladay made a tour around the ballpark the last couple of nights? He went in with Kevin Beal, who's the director of suite sales and client services. Philippe Almont, he's playing a little video games. And there's Carlos Ruiz. He's not playing this weekend. So, Sarge, where was he? He was in the Majestic Clubhouse store.
Yep.
Handing out books in the Fanatic Attic, which is a great place to go if you ever get a chance to come to the ballpark, even during the offseason. And then, of course, earlier today, we had a chance to see Sarge and Larry Anderson sing happy birthday to Declan Robinson.
Yeah, he was surprised, and I think he enjoyed seeing himself on the
video board.
Yes, as opposed to giving high fives or listening to the song.
I
thought the song was a lot better. Well, not really a lot better, but you were able to hear us both this time.
Yeah, I think that you guys harmonized well today compared to yesterday where you dominated.
Yeah, well, there's a pitcher and a guy that played every day. What can you say?
Jeremy Jeffress is the new pitcher for the Blue Jays, taking over for Josh Johnson. Johnson went 5 innings. He allowed 4 runs and scattered 4 hits.
Still a good pitcher, but not the fastball that he used to have. And Johnson, he used to really explode your bat, but again, coming back. And then if he's the 4th starter, that in itself takes pressure off of him. Got pressure on that number 2. Yeah, all the pitchers want to win, but when things are bad, that number 1, number 2, you want them to be able to settle things down.
0-2 the count to Inciarte. And a late swing and a foul ball. And it remains 0-2. Inciarte did not play, or has not played, above single A during his professional career. Grounder foul, and it remains no balls and 2 strikes.
Well, that's a pretty big jump, and again, just how you're going to be used. And usually you always wanted a player to have a certain amount of at-bats in the minor leagues, and that's how the game has changed some.
Well, he has had his share of at-bats. It's not as vast as what you're alluding to, but he's been in single A since 2009. When he began with Missoula. He's a lifetime .283 hitter in the minor leagues. He lines that one toward left center field, and that's going to drop for a base hit. He might think about 2. Nope. Rasmus was able to get to it quickly. I guess my surprise, Sarge, is looking at Ender's career and watching him play in these spring training games and wondering why the heck was he sitting in single A for as long as he was sitting in single A.
Well, sometimes you get lost and not able to recover in a particular organization. That's why it's great that, the 5-year guys there are able to go to different clubs and have a second chance.
Rollins is 1 for 2 today. And it's no balls and 1 strike. A little late on that pitch.
Yeah, that's the one he wants to stay off of. Very difficult to get on top of it. And that, to be quite frank, one of the pitches that he pops up quite a bit. Though he, for me, again, is more of a low ball hitter, which would mean belt down as opposed to belt up.
Runner goes, and the pitch is lifted in the air to shallow left field. Inciarte found it. And we'll go back to first. So the first out is recorded here in the 5th, and that'll bring Chase Utley to the plate.
Those are the pitches that, again, for me, for J-Row, you want to stay on top of that pitch there. I know he can hit the ball out of the ballpark, especially when you're behind, though, in the game. You want to try and keep that ball on the line. If you hit it out, great, but keep the train moving, so to speak. Keep that line going.
Utley is 0 for 1. A sac flies last time up. All around baseball today is the final day of exhibition games With the start of the season upon us tomorrow with the Texas Rangers against the Houston Astros, teams are playing. Some are playing down in Florida or in Arizona. Others are playing all around the country in different spots. You know, the Giants and the A's are facing off out in Northern California. The Dodgers and the Angels are facing off out in Southern California.
See with Buster Posey, looks like he signed a pretty nice deal or a long deal with the San Francisco Giants. Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's been playing that long, and I think he signed like what, a 6-7 year deal or 9-year deal. Well, that means that he'll be with them,
yeah,
like it or not. But Buster, what a great kid, though. I mean, Rookie of the Year, 300 hitter, catcher that can hit. MVP.
Yeah, it's been a good couple of days for Buster Posey and for Justin Verlander for the Detroit Tigers. Paul Goldschmidt also signed a 5-year deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So they've eaten up basically his free agency, or the years before his free agency, and then a couple more. One ball, no strike, the count to Chase Utley. There goes the runner. The pitch is taken outside. Throw to second a little high, and a stolen base for Inciarte.
I'll tell you, that was almost as if it was a pitch out. Ball on the outside part of the plate. He stole that. Blanco, one of the better catchers. Look at that jump, however. Ball up high. And that's what happens. They will get pressure put on you. Straight steal, we talked about it. He didn't look in at all. Usually if it's a hit and run, you'll start to run and then you'll take a look to see what that hitter's doing. That's a straight steal. Didn't look over at all.
Well, now the Phillies have a runner in scoring position. The count 2 balls and no strikes to Utley. Home half of the 5th inning. Blue Jays on top 6-4. Outside 3-0. Ryan Howard on deck. See where the Yankees are playing today?
No, I didn't.
Look out on the scoreboard. You see them out there at all? The NYY?
No, I don't.
Yeah, they're not, because they're playing at West Point, playing against Army.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You ever been up to West Point?
No, I haven't.
Pretty majestic place along the Hudson. Beautiful place. Yankees played yesterday against the Washington Nationals down in D.C.
Yeah.
And as they get closer to New York, they've decided to go to the Hudson Valley region to take on Army at West Point. Pretty good treat for those kids.
I would have to think so.
That game is in the bottom of the 1st, by the way, up at West Point. Utley pops it up. Left side of the infield. East Torres is there, the 3rd baseman. Some of the other teams around Major League Baseball are playing in the cities of some of their affiliates.
Yeah.
The Mariners are playing the Rockies. That game's in Salt Lake City, Utah. And the Padres are facing the Rangers. They're playing that game in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, that's what we used to do, is play at some of the different affiliates. Therefore, you get a lot more interest there in that city with whatever team it might be in there. So when you come there as a major league team and you're coming to a minor league city, you'll get all the kids out there. Just get the whole city all juiced up for the season.
Phillies did that one year playing, well, they did it a number of years, but most recently they played in Lehigh Valley. We were out there for the opener of that ballpark. In the Eastern League, the Pirates are playing in Altoona today, the Altoona Curve. is their Double-A affiliate. Ryan Howard pulls it right into the shift. And the second baseman Bonifacio throws him out. And the side is retired. No runs, 1 hit. 1 man left in scoring position. We've played 5 innings here at Philadelphia. The Blue Jays on top by 2. Cole Hamels is the loader. They were entertaining some fans and firing off some Hatfield Dollar Dogs during the course of the last half inning. See them wheeling around from one side of the field to another. You know, Cliff probably had that in his mind yesterday. He goes, all right, I got to load it. Now I'm going to shoot it.
There's no doubt about it. And both are left-handed. Having fun.
Of course, the Fanatic all in red. Phillies wrap up Paint the Town Red Week. And that's all she wrote, Sarge. No more hot dogs.
Yep.
We move on to the 6th inning. It's 6-4. Blue Jays on top. Henry Blanco is 2 for 2. He singled his first 2 times up. And the first pitch over for a strike. It's 0-1. Blue Jays with 9 hits. The Phillies with 5 hits so far. Lennon will have a week off before his first start in the Phillies uniform. He looks pretty sharp here today.
Yep. Well, he's going to have good games, bad games. I mean, 162 ball games. Obviously, everybody's going to have their ups and downs. But if he can keep that ball, that was good location, good breaking ball. A hitter thinks it's a fastball, and that ball breaks down in on your hands. Good pitch.
That one just missed off the outside corner, 1-0.
Now, that's one of the pitches there you'd like to see him get. Really, if he can get those kind of pitches just off the plate, maybe a little. He's got to live out there. He can't afford to come more middle in. But obviously, Lennon, the type of guy, he can eat up some innings for you. You got to have him on your team. Guys got to stay within themselves. Kyle Kendrick, pitcher that needs to get ground balls, stay ahead of hitters. Just make sure he gets his confidence up.
Bonifacio nearly offered at that. He takes low, and it's 2-2.
All the guys, too, are very anxious to get the season underway. Everything will start to count for real here.
Okay, Lannon didn't have a competition going with Aaron Cook, but Aaron Cook was in spring training and pitched pretty well for the Phillies. Phillies decided to grant him his free agency. Cook has since signed with the Colorado Rockies and will go to AAA, a team that he's very familiar with. And a called strike 3. Bonifacio ran it full, and then Ladden picked up his second consecutive strikeout, 4 overall.
Well, living on the corners, that's what we talked about. If he can do that, he'll be very effective.
Reyes up for the 4th time today. Reyes is 1 for 3. Fly to left. Doubled and scored. Yeah, that fly to center in the 4th inning. Outside corner, 1-1.
Hey, there's a lot of people who have problems with Jose Reyes, and for me, I have none. One of the better players, I think, in the game today, leading the league in hitting last year.
1-2 the count.
Sorry, Tom, will say that he's more of a little bit of a hot dog, but the guy, he's smiling because he's winning most of the time.
Slaps it foul. It remains 1-2. Well, I guess that's the whole thing. I mean, Jose, as a person, is a good person.
Yeah.
But on the field, he does show a lot of emotion, and some people don't like that.
Yeah, I like it on my team.
You do?
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely. Oh, definitely. And not only that, though, this guy's one of the ones that usually will make sure that he makes up for any kind of antics by doing and playing well in the field.
Well, John Ladden just struck out the side. 5 strikeouts overall for the Phils left-handers. He gets Jose Reyes to wrap up the 6th. Toyota, let's go places. Bottom of the 6th inning, 6-4 Blue Jays on top. Final game for the Phils before the start of the regular season. Mike McCoy, by the way, comes in to play shortstop for Toronto. And the new pitcher is right-hander Esmil Rogers. He will take over for the Blue Jays. Rogers this spring, 10 games, 1-1, an ERA of 6.94. Phillies first saw Rogers in the big leagues with the Colorado Rockies. Yeah, that was back in September 2009. Blue Jays acquired Rogers from the Cleveland Indians in a deal that sent Mike Aviles and Yan Gomes to Cleveland in November of last year. They'll face Michael Young, who has an RBI double today for the Phillies. Now that ball that Michael Young hit today is what he'll provide, something like that.
Good clutch hitting, and you like that, especially when it's 2 outs and didn't appear that they were going to score. These are the things that Michael will bring to the table. The guy that hits that ball hard up the middle the other way. He's been very successful in doing that throughout his career. And obviously, that's the team that drafted him early on. Toronto Blue Jays traded for Esteban Loaiza, pitcher there with the Texas Rangers at the time.
That was a silly trade, wasn't it?
I'll say it was.
I talked to Michael about that. I said, that you have talked about that trade for the last few years and how much you did not want Toronto, who you were working for at the time, to trade Michael Young. And Michael said that he kind of sensed that something was happening, that something would happen around the trade deadline. He thought there was a chance he would be involved in a deal. And he said for him, as soon as the trade was made, he looked at the roster, the Texas Rangers, and thought, all right, I'm going to be in the big leagues next year. It was an opportunity for him to win a job, a major league job.
Yeah, so it turned out great for him. He's always been just a good player. Same type of player, though, and he was in the minor leagues. Guy that hit line drives. The only thing is he was a little bit thinner, even though he's in pretty thin now. But same kind of hitter, line drive hitter.
Lance Nix is 0 for 2. And it's 1 ball and no strikes as he takes a breaking ball in the dirt. Chad Durbin's throwing in the bullpen for the Phillies. As that throw nearly got away from the first baseman, Adam Lind. There's Chad Durbin.
Very important for the Fighting Phils to get off to a good start. Talked about that a little bit, and being able to think about winning the series. I've always felt long time ago with Cubby and Pete and those guys always saying the first game of the series most important.
That's Nix picks up a base hit. Young stops at second. The Phillies have first and second with 1 man down for John Mayberry. Well, Cole Hamels will get the nod on Monday, so Phillies will be looking for him to provide a spark on the hill and get them off to that good start. Is there some reconvincing that the Phillies need to do for everybody else in the league and for themselves?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, they feel that they can compete. All the teams feel that now. Most of them. They can compete with the Fighting Phils, so it's up to them to make sure they put them back in their place. And how you do that? You got to win ball games. I feel that Cole is up to the task of being that #1 guy. I mean, he's not overjoyed, overexcited. His demeanor is just almost like, well, it's just a matter of fact. Almost doesn't really matter. Quite an honor, however, to be the opening day pitcher, because that's the guy you're really, really counting on. So, again, when you talk with him, you really, really know that, hey, this guy is all about that, and Murph actually even talked with him about that same thing.
Well, they forced the runner at second base. Murph, what did Cole say today about getting a chance to be the opening day starter?
Well, Sarge is absolutely right. He's downplaying it, and obviously it's very important to him, and he's very excited about it. But he said, look, once the season starts, there's 5 of us going out there, every 5th day and just trying to do our job. He's talked about wanting to be great and getting to the point in his career where he believes he can be great, and the way he prepares, every 5th day to go out there. He said, look, you don't get a whole lot of opportunities when you're a starting pitcher, so you want to go out there and make the most of it, be great, and take advantage of the opportunities. He certainly has done that this spring, and he's certainly done it over the years, but I think he sees this year as a real opportunity for him to make a name for himself in this game.
And the guy that was sitting behind him in that shot in the dugout, Roy Halladay, has put his stamp of approval on the fact that Cole Hamels should be the opening day starter for the Phillies.
Yeah, and the thing is too, though. I mean, Murph, no jealousy with these guys.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not.
They're all in, and to be able to try and win. And the thing too, though, and Cole understands when the chips are down, that's when you need the number one to step up. I mean, after a few losing ball games, 5, 6 in a row, you got your number one out there. In most cases, I know we did. We're expecting a shutout. Steve Carlton usually delivered most of the time.
2-0 the count to Erik Kratz. And now Lowe 3-0. Oh, it all begins on Monday, 7:05 first pitch down in Atlanta. Phillies and the Braves will be on the air at PHL 17 with the pregame show at 6:30. And Kratz rips one foul. Look out, everybody.
Boy, that ball was roped.
Young over at third. Mayberry over at first. 3-1 the count. Throw over to first base. Diving back is Mayberry. Up high, ball 4, and now the bases are loaded. Yeah, that'll bring Inciarte to the plate. Well, here's the Phillies schedule for the first week of the season. Games against the Braves on Monday and Wednesday. And then on the Comcast Network on Thursday at 7 o'clock. That's Cliff Lee's first start. And then a home opener on Comcast Sportsnet next Friday against the Kansas City Royals. It's really odd to see that logo in our schedule. That's who the Phillies will open up against. Sportsnet, Comcast Network, and PHL 17 for that 3-game series. Here's Inciarte, and he takes on the outside corner. It's 0-1. Inciarte singled his first time up, 1 for 1. Hitting .290 this spring, just 1 run batted in. And he's behind 0-2.
You know, just with the level of where he has played at times, you bet he's going to be overmatched. But the fact is, again, when you're looking into long term, looking into the heart of players, he fits into the mold of what the Phillies really want.
Swing and a miss, and the Phillies are going to leave him loaded as Henry Blanco just touches the plate to wrap up the inning. So no runs, 2 hits, 3 men left for the Phillies. We move to the 7th with the Phils down by 2.
a little more offense here this afternoon. Last night a 1-0 game. Both teams threw up 4 spots there in the third inning. Blue Jays have added a couple solo runs, and they lead at 6-4. Jose Bautista solo home run. He scored 3 today. Edwin Encarnacion has a couple doubles. Michael Young 2-run doubles, smoked that ball to right field. And Kyle Kendrick struggled a little bit with his command, it looked like, today, and got hit around in his 3 innings. John Lannon did a good job giving up the 1 run in his outing. Phillies will make some changes there, and old steady Freddie Galvis over there at third base. He can play anywhere. And Michael Martinez is going to move into the game. And the new catcher.
It's that Carlos Ruiz guy.
Yeah, Carlos Ruiz, and Chad Durbin's going to be the pitcher, Tom.
So Durbin will face Melky Cabrera to lead things off. And the first pitch is a strike. It's 0-1.
It's the last time that we'll be able to see Carlos here for a while. Talked about that earlier, how much they'll miss him.
I wasn't sure if he was going to play at all in these 2 ball games.
That's why I thought, who's that catcher down there?
Outside, 1 ball and 1 strike. Chad Durbin not wearing his normal number that he wore with the Phillies the first time around. He's wearing number 45 now for the Phils, and he'll go back to Atlanta where he was very successful last season. 2-1 the count to Cabrera. Outside, 3-1.
45, huh? Well, Tug wearing that.
Yep.
I don't remember a whole lot of numbers, but I remember that one.
It's upstairs, so ball 4. Cabrera draws a walk. Wake up to a morning news that's worth waking up to. It's the ultimate water cooler conversation about everything you need to know. It's Eye Opener, and it's a different kind of morning news. Monday, starting at 6 on PHL 17. Rajai Davis comes over to pitch run for Cabrera at first. Got to keep an eye on him. He can run. And Bautista takes outside. It's 1 ball and no strikes. Bautista has homered today. He's walked. He's singled, and he's scored 3 runs.
Durbin's always had a pretty good move to first because he has quick feet. That's a big lead. Wow, that's a big lead. That will get your attention, too. Pitcher's attention.
Davis last year stole 46 bases. Here's Dwayne Murphy, the first base coach for the Blue Jays. There he goes. And the pitch is taken for a strike. The throw to second base right on line by Carlos Ruiz.
Well, we all know he can do that. Boy, he has quick feet behind home plate. I talk about quick feet for a pitcher. A lot of that is in your footwork and being able to get into the throw the way that he does and come out nice and low. Watch his footwork here. Gets rid of it so fast. And a good throw and a quick tag by Chase, and they get him close. Well, even if they didn't, he's out.
Outside, 2-2.
Throw beat him.
You're right, though, about the feet. I mean, and just the whole, what they call the pop.
Exactly. There's a lot of keys to that stuff, but your feet are really important.
Over to shortstop. Michael Martinez backhands, a little low at first, dug out by Mayberry. Michael Martinez will probably play in a little shortstop, and in fact, a lot of shortstop for Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. Two away. Here's Edwin Encarnacion. Iron Pigs will have their home opener on the 4th of April. So 5 days away from that. It's a 7:05 start. And we heard today most of their roster, in fact all their roster, is pretty much filled out. Be pretty neat to go out to Lehigh Valley to watch them play, because you get a chance to see Darren Ruff play a little bit as he continues to evolve into a major league player. Chad Durbin works a fairly easy 7th. Time to stretch here at Citizens Bank Park. The Phils looking for a little more offense when we get back. Dog night here at the ballpark. The first one is Tuesday, April 9th at 7:05 when the Mets are in town, and Monday the 22nd against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Both games 7:05. Always a great deal. The Hatfield Dollar Dog Nights at the ballpark. Order your tickets at Phillies.com. You'll see the hot dog shooter at some point. You probably won't see Cole Hamels or Cliff Lee shooting the hot dogs at that point.
No, that was a part-time job for them today.
Jimmy Rollins, by the way, is mixing some of the audio that's going on around the ballpark right now. Fans are reacting not only to that, but also seeing him up on the big Fanavision in left field. Using that click effect system that they have that was made so popular about 15, 16 years ago around minor league baseball. It's kind of found itself up to Major League Baseball, too.
Talked about Jimmy being very, very interested in the music business. And there's an example of how he's over there working the board.
Carlos Ruiz will lead it off here in the 7th inning against Sergio Santos. One of a few changes for the Blue Jays. Rajai Davis stays in the ballgame. He'll play left field. And the new right fielder for Toronto is Ryan Langerhans. 1 ball, no strikes the count to Carlos, who's hitting .240 this spring with a home run. Only saw Carlos 1 time at Bright House Field this year in a game. That was it.
Yeah, he did some traveling, did some road games. You look at the numbers on Santos here. We saw him in 1 game. Left-handed hitters had some good swings at him that day. Hard thrower.
Carlos fouls another one off. 1-2 the count.
You know, he's such mixed emotions right now. He knows he has to serve his suspension. He's sorry about what happened, but he really wants to be here. Just talking to him the other day, you can tell it really hurts. But he has to do that and pay the price and then get back here.
Hits that over to third. And he's Torres gobbles it up and throws across the diamond. 1 out here in the bottom of the 7th. And Carlos has said all the right things, as you would expect he would. And you know, the biggest thing that he has voiced time and time again is just how embarrassed he is about the whole situation. As you would expect a player to be, a player with the kind of pride that he has. But as Wheels mentioned, one of the positives about the end of the suspension is as he gets toward the end, the last 10 days or so, he's able to start playing in games down in the minor leagues, which is a good thing.
Yeah, real games.
Right, not just
instead in spring that he's going to
correct.
Be real competition, and it will help him get ready. Of course, nothing gets you ready for the major leagues except playing in the major leagues.
Utley 0 for 2, sac fly back in the third when the Phillies scored their 4 runs. Little low, 1 ball and 1 strike. Off speed pitch.
Yeah, watching him the other day, I said, well, how's he get left-handed hitters out? Because they really had some good swings on him. Well, that's a changeup, but it was a little bit high. Chase swung and missed at it. This guy's an over-the-top right-hander. He throws hard.
And a called strike 3. A slider on the outside part of the plate that he backdoored.
Yeah, he backdoor breaking ball there. So we didn't see a whole lot of that from him the other day.
Phillies designated hitter
Jimmy Rollins again mixing the music for Ryan Howard coming up the plate. He threw up the theme of Sanford and Son as Ryan was coming to the plate.
That's your buddy up there.
That's
Ryan.
right.
Young James is up there mixing, as he calls him. See that story they did an Abbott Costello routine?
I didn't see that.
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I think it's going to be on pretty soon. But anyway, the producer was saying how good they were, and Jimmy was saying how tough it was to do it, but that he used to do the lines when he was a kid. Now they're baseball lines,
right?
But it's an Abbott Costello thing that MLB put together evidently, and they were involved in it. They taped it down in Clearwater. It should be fun to watch.
Well, they have a great relationship. They have an unbelievable rapport with each other. So they certainly have chemistry.
Yeah, and the Abbott Costello, of course, is who's on first.
Right.
You know, that goes without saying, I would think.
0-2 the count to Ryan Howard. 3-man shift on. Fouls it back. Remains 0-2. Which one was Abbott and which one was Costello?
I don't know. I just read it.
I thought that was third base.
It was in the Daily News the other day. Who's on first? I don't know. What's on second? That was funny. To this day, you watch that thing, it'll make you laugh.
Swing and a miss. Well, Santos looked very different today compared to the other day against the Phillies. Got a couple of left-handers out with some strikeouts. 1, 2, 3 go the Phils. 7 in the books. 2 more to go to wrap up spring training. W.B. Mason. You can't go wrong when you buy right. and by the Quality Plus Ford stores. Go further. Oh, they're doing a little YMCA on the dugout as we go to the 8th inning. The Fanatic all in red as Paintown Red Week comes to a close. Today was a scout day also at the ballpark, so some of the Girl Scouts who were part of the parade that took place prior to the game, there were hundreds of kids, boys and girls alike, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Webelos, Cub Scouts, walking around the warning track around Citizens Bank Park. Pete Orr was not part of that parade, but I'm sure at one time he might have been. Anyway, the kids who come to the ballpark today, not only get a chance to enjoy the Phillies and the Blue Jays, as Antonio Bastardo takes over here in the 8th inning, but they get the parade. They also get a Phillies Scout Night patch. You know, the scouts were all in full uniform today as they were going around, and they get a little patch that they could put on their uniform. So it was a good day for them, and beautiful sunshiny afternoon.
Were you a Cub Scout?
I was. I actually was. I went all the way up into Boy Scouts. I got my tenderfoot wheels. I don't know what that means at this point. Got that early on, and then that was it. I called game over at that point.
Yeah. I remember being a Cub Scout. Pack 315 at St. Anastasia's.
Yeah, pack 147 for me down the shore in New Jersey.
Never forget that stuff.
Yeah. My dad was a scoutmaster. My mom was a den mother. Fly ball, shallow left field. Late start for Dominic Brown, and he can't get it. Kicked off his glove. Michael Martinez was pointing the whole time, so he kind of peeled off.
He broke back, seriously broke back on that and misplayed it. And then tried to outrun it at the end. Well, he took one of those awkward slides, too, to try and get the ball. And this is where you worry about his wrist. He broke back so far, and he has a long run for it and can't come up with it. Let's see what he does with his wrist when it goes. Well, look how he tried to protect himself a little bit better that time.
So a base runner for the Blue Jays. It'll be Andy LaRoche that'll pinch run for Adam Lind. There's LaRoche. Colby Rasmus, who's 0 for 3 with an RBI. Hits one in the air to right field. He golfed that one. Nick's going back toward the wall, and it's up off the top of the wall. It's a fair ball in play, and it'll be a double for Colby Rasmus. So runners on second and third. So Bastardo against these first two left-handers has given up what I guess that first ball will be 2 base hits.
Yeah, Tom said golfed it, and you saw why, because it was in that hot zone for a left-hand hitter down, and then missed a home run by a foot maybe, right at the very top of the wall out there, the fence on top of the wall. Yeah, the first one was a fly ball to left. It should have been an out, and that ball was hammered.
Running at second base is Ricardo Nanita. We've seen a lot of him the last few days. And Mysoris Torres will be the batter, so the infield comes in. Phillies down by 2. One of the parts of the game last year, you know, statistically we threw out a lot of numbers that were part of the 8th inning a season ago for the Phillies, and the numbers were not good. But as strange as it sounds, this is one of those situations that was a thorn in the Phillies' side. You know, they're down by 2 in the 8th inning in their home ballpark, still within reach. And then the 8th inning, and not that it's done that yet, but you know, there's problems right now. The 8th inning blew up on them.
Sure, get away from you.
Now they could work their way out of it here, but last year there were many times where they just couldn't get out of it.
Well, your point being you're at home, and then every time you give up more runs late in the game, that takes that tie and run further and further away from being able to do damage.
Foul ball, and it remains 1 ball and 2 strikes. Inside and low. 2 balls, 2 strikes the count. They'll peel that check. And no swing, says Phil Cuzzy, who's over at first base. Over towards second. Pete Orr looks the runner back to third, and then they get the out. One away, second and third. Henry Blanco's coming up. Hey, let's bring in Greg Murphy. It's time for a little news and notes around Major League Baseball. Murph?
It is that time, C-Mac. It's some injury news for the defending champs. The Giants' Pablo Sandoval is battling an elbow injury. He's been in and out of their lineup all spring. His opening day is very much in doubt. And Miguel Tejada, well, he's back in the big leagues. The former AL MVP has made the Royals opening day roster. 38-year-old last played in Major League Baseball in the year 2011. And Braves reliever Johnny Venters, guys, is on his way to see Dr. James Andrews, which is never a good thing. His elbow is also ailing, and the Braves are saying that they expect that he will start the season on the disabled list. So certainly not good news for the Atlanta Braves, who we will see in about 36 hours, I guess.
Yeah, he's had Tommy John surgery before, so this, you know, not that he's going to have that again, but you know, there's a potential for that. That's where, you know, there's some angst right now if you're part of the Atlanta Braves organization.
Yeah, as Murph says there, the things you don't like to hear run together, or is your pitcher's going to see Dr. Andrews
or your quarterback, this day and age.
He is very good at what he does, but no one wants to go meet him.
Yeah.
No, not firsthand, Murph. No,
unless you're having some kind of barbecue or something, you're inviting him for just the conversation.
It's a family thing, yeah, but you don't want to go see his knives.
No, and that's something. I mean, they have Eric O'Flaherty, who's a very good left-hander, but they had two big weapons, two left-handed weapons out of that bullpen last year.
Yeah, and you could tell Venters was a little short last year off the year before. He was so good.
2-0 the count to Henry Blanco. And as far as Miguel Tejada is concerned, Murph mentioned that story with the Royals. We saw him in the World Baseball Classic. He had a heck of a day, just like everybody else did for the Dominican Republic that afternoon, but he certainly looked like he had a little spring in his step.
He was looking for a job.
Blanco takes a strike. It's 3-1.
Pitcher Walden they got too from the Angels has been banged up a little bit for the Braves with a sore back, I think it is, in spring training. He has a big arm.
To the count to Henry Blanco. 2 for 3 today.
Well, Bastardo can get strikeouts, and that's what he's really looking for right now from Blanco.
Ground ball foul.
Trying to get a breaking ball. Chase a breaking ball for a strikeout. Henry Blanco's had a nice career. Guy never hit a whole lot, but he gets some clutch hits for you. Always known as a good catcher, thrower, caller of the game, and has had a job every year somewhere.
If he decided to put his jerseys up in his man cave in his rec room, he'd have a lot of jerseys.
Yeah, they used to call him stickers on a suitcase, and he's been a lot of places. When he was with the Braves, Chipper used to call him Hank White. Love that. So it means in Spanish.
3-2 the count. Infield in.
Oh,
and that pitch just missed. Ruiz thought it was there. He held it for a while. Bases are now loaded, and Bonifacio will bat. Now the Phillies ball girls. That's the way to do it, Wheels. You're going to be a ball girl down the left to right field line. That's the way to do it right there.
When they do the interviewing process here, they all have played some softball. So they have a pretty good feel of how to field the baseball down there. The interviewing process in Clearwater is slightly different.
You think?
Just leave it at that.
Yeah. Handful of new ball girls that are part of the staff this year. That'll be here at the yard, but also out in the community as they normally are. Bonifacio has the count even, 1 ball and 1 strike.
Be less entertaining to see them catch those fair balls down there, but probably better when the regular season begins.
I would think so. 1-2 the count. How do you think Dan McDonough is feeling about the way these young ladies are fielding up here? Dan McDonough, one of the assistant GMs down in Clearwater, right, for the Threshers.
He's involved in the selection and training of the girls down there for Hooters.
Foul ball, and it remains 1-2.
He does what you're supposed to do down there, and they do what you're supposed to do up here. More entertainment down there. You agree with that?
I would agree with you on that. Fly ball, center field. That should be deep enough to score the run. Inciarte is under it. Makes the catch. The throw goes to third. Pretty good throw he let loose there.
Yeah, he's good arm.
And it's 7-4 Toronto.
That's a good job by Bonifacio there to get the run in. Rich Doobie's going to come out and make a pitching change.
He did have bullpen action. And it looks like Bastardo is going to be lifted from this game. 24 pitches. I told Rich Doobie, I said the other day, I said, you surprised Bastardo when you came out and took him out after he faced just 2 left-handers. I said, so you didn't mention that that's all he was going to do? He said, no, I didn't want him to think about it. Well, today he probably had an idea that he wasn't going to face the entire lineup. We have a pitching change. Turkey Hill Kids opening night is Saturday, April 7th, when the Phillies take on the Kansas City Royals, and all fans 14 and under will receive the Jimmy Rollins replica Gold Glove Trophy. Compliments of Turkey Hill. Make plans now. Order your tickets at Phillies.com. 2 runners on, 2 outs. A run in for the Blue Jays here in the top of the 8th. And right-hander Zach Minor, who will begin the season in the minor leagues, is the new pitcher for the Phillies. And he'll face Mike McCoy. And he fires a strike. It's 0-1. Minor's numbers this spring for the Phils: 10 games, 1-1, an ERA of 8.5, 13 strikeouts in 14 innings of work. Broke his bat, and Pete Orr is out in shallow center field to take care of it. But the inning does finally come to a close. A run does score. 2 runners left on base. On to the bottom of the 8th. The Phillies trailing 7-4. Of this year's Fightin' Phils. John Clark and Mike Missinelli will hit all the hot topics on a special edition of the Phillies postgame show coming up next, live from Sugar House Casino. Phillies trail at 7-4. We go to the bottom of the 8th inning. 7 runs on 11 hits for the Blue Jays, 4 runs on 7 hits for the Phillies. They got disco camp going on here at the ballpark. Those ladies wanted to get up on Fanavision, so when they weren't up on Fanavision, they didn't realize they were on television. They could have kept on dancing.
Yeah.
Rajai Davis moves to center field for the Blue Jays from left field, and the new left fielder is Ricardo Nanita. There he is. And the new first baseman is Adam Lowen, who will take over for the Blue Jays. Freddie Galvis leads it off here in the 8th, and he'll face right-hander Marcus Stroman.
This guy's a #1 pick out of Duke.
And he delivers low.
22nd overall in 2012.
Kind of reminds you of Tom Gordon when you look at him. Just the way he throws, the way he's wearing his hat, the whole thing.
5'9", 185 pounds.
And he throws pretty hard, too. That fastball is at 92 miles an hour. Outside. And it's 2 balls and 1 strike.
Only played, obviously, 1 year of professional baseball after being selected last year. Did wind up in the Eastern League where he pitched in 8 games, all out of the pen.
Well, as Wheels, you mentioned he's from Duke, so they may have him on the fast track if he's able to show something this year to start the season. Fly ball, center field. And Davis, sunglasses on, floats under it, puts it away, 1 out. And that'll bring Dom Brown to the plate as Galvis is retired. Marcus Stroman spells his name S-T-R-O-M-A-N. He does not spell it like the Stroman bread sign out in right field. S-T-R-O-E-H-M-A-N-N. Two N's and a couple other letters in there.
What a great tie-in. Can't put anything by our guys.
Pitch on the outside corner. It's 0-1. A couple of the new signs that are here at the ballpark this year that you'll see when you come out to the yard.
That's one of them. Stroman. The one in center field's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Sunoco sign, which is in center field, and Stroman, well, he handled that like a hot piece of bread right there.
Yes, he did. That was,
Two outs.
That was a warm roll coming back at him, and he made a good play. There's a Sunoco sign out in dead center. That really catches your eye when you walk in. First thing you know, not first thing, but one of the first things I saw was,
yeah, I agree.
Look at that sign.
And it's backlit to at night, which is pretty sharp. Jimmy Rollins playing the Gilligan's Island theme for Lance Nix as he comes to the plate. He's playing it loud, too.
Jimmy, he's having a good time over there.
Foul ball, and it's 0-1.
Thank you.
Outside, 1 ball and 1 strike to Nix. Nix is 1 for 3 this afternoon. Right side to his left is Eugenio Velez, and he throws him out for the final out here in the 8th inning. 1, 2, 3 go the Phillies. Stroman in his first game in a major league ballpark works a perfect inning. 7:05. All fans 15 and over will receive the free opening week T-shirt. Compliments of McDonald's. Make plans now. Order your tickets by going to Phillies.com. All 3 games are night games that series. Top of the 9th inning at 7-4 Toronto. Davis will lead it off against Zach Minor. And he hits one sharply through the hole on the left side, a base hit. So first hit of the day for Rajai Davis, who came on a pinch run back in the 7th. And that'll bring Langerhans to the plate. I'll tell you, I think we've said Ryan Langerhans' name 8 million different times during his career. Seriously.
Yeah, he's been a lot of teams.
Langerhans, Langerhans.
Yeah.
Seems like it's different every time we see him.
Larry Anderson played with his dad.
And it's different than.
Yeah, his nickname was Hands.
Low, ball 1. That's why when we started calling him Hans, Larry goes, I'm sure we called him Hands when he was in the minor leagues.
You know, he had a base running snafu in that game we were talking about earlier when the Phillies clinched against the Nats in the 9th inning, right before the double play.
I forgot he was with the Nationals at that time.
I can't remember exactly what he probably should have scored. He wound up at 3rd, and then the double play ended the game.
1 ball, 1 strike the count. Outside, 2-1. Zach Minor came on to get the last out in the 8th inning, pitching here in the 9th. Runner goes. Check swing, foul ball. Davis was thrown out trying to steal his last time on the base paths. He led the American League in caught stealing last year.
Yeah,
he was caught more than anybody else.
He likes to run. That looked like a hit and run with the count 2-1. And Langerhans, he started to swing at, then stopped. And he couldn't find the ball. He's looking all over the place for it.
Minor threw that one at 93 miles an hour. So that's the thing during spring training. I wasn't sure how hard Zach Minor was throwing. 93 miles an hour is pretty good pop.
Yeah, well, hey, we love being down there. It's great. What a ballpark and all, but it's nothing like being in the big leagues. And this is such a tremendous place.
Davis goes. Pitch is taken low. That was low, right?
Yeah. Ball 4. And Carlos Ruiz, I guess he didn't get a quick call down there because you don't want to be throwing on that when it's ball 4 because that ball's live.
So 2 on, and in between innings, the bongo cam was part of the fun and festivities here at the ballpark, and so is Jimmy Rollins doing a little dancing and a little mixing.
Try that. We get hurt, wouldn't we? Pull every. That's a hammy waiting to happen right there.
Jimmy really has to work on his personality, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, Jimmy's really a wallflower. We all know that.
That was funny. Everybody was laughing. They were watching, but they were laughing too.
Great moves.
Mike Nickius is the batter for the Blue Jays with runners on first and second. Nobody out here in the 9th inning.
Looks like they're going to bunt here. No, they're not.
Swing and a miss. 1-1.
Well, he was holding the bat there for a second. I thought he was trying to, and he was going to look like he was going to bunt. I don't want to do that in an exhibition game, the 9th inning, when you're ahead by 3, unless you want to work on something.
Breaking ball. Raul Valdez warming up in the bullpen. Funniest guy on the team, Raul Valdez.
Yeah, that was another story from yesterday. We're talking about the Q&A for the Chamber of Commerce for the players. And a fan asked the guys we had up there, was Chase Utley, Jonathan Papelbon, Roy Halladay, who's the funniest guy on the team? And Pap goes, Raul. And Roy Halladay leads that to me. He says, who's Raul? Who's he talking about? And I said, well, maybe Valdez. And so Doc said, you mean Valdez? And Pap just got a blank look on his face. You said maybe he thought Ruiz. But Chooch is funny.
Chooch is funny.
He is really funny.
He orchestrated that silent treatment last year with Darren Ruff on his home run.
Right.
3-2 the count to Nickias.
But it was funny to see Doc say, like, what's he talking
Well, he probably knew Raul Valdez, but he probably didn't think he was the funniest guy.
Raul, he goes.
Ibanez is in Seattle.
I think people really enjoyed that. That was one of those real moments. You just don't recreate those, or make them up, or plan them.
You weren't trying to be funny with him.
I just tried to stay out of the way. Just let them do their thing, and they were funny.
Runners go. Pitch is fouled back toward the Hall of Fame club, and it remains 3 balls and 2 strikes. Runners go again. And another foul ball. John Gibbons starting the runners with the count 3-2 and nobody out.
Yeah, a lot of times managers don't do that because the line drives a triple play then. They'll wait till 1 out. But in this case, get a little motion working here. It doesn't really matter. Triple play and get him on the bus quicker.
As you said, they're heading home to Toronto. They'll play the Indians in the opener. It'll be Justin Masterson against R.A. Dickey in the opener for the Blue Jays and the Indians. I think they open on Tuesday. I don't think they open on Monday. Another foul ball. I guess the way I could find out is taking a look at the
Tuesday
the schedule.
At 7:07 at the Rogers Center.
There's R.A. Dickey to the left, Brandon Morrow to the right. Yeah, 3 against Cleveland, 3 against Boston, if anybody's wondering if anybody wants to take in 6-game series up at the Rogers Center. Then an off day on Monday, and they have to go to Detroit to play the Tigers for 3. It's going to be chilly in Detroit.
Not far, though.
No.
That's a quick road trip.
All 3 games are day games, though. Line drive left field. Dominic Brown going back, and it's over his head and off the wall. Davis scores. And they're going to wave the second runner home. It's Ryan Langerhans, and the throw to the plate not in time. It's a 2-run double. It's a 9-4 ball game.
Mickey has hit a ball just like that last year when the Mets came from behind, beat the Phillies a bunch of games. Those games Tom was talking about earlier, that they would lose late, and Nicky has hit a ball like that off the wall. Now this is a case for Dominic Brown. You have to read this, and if you can't catch it, back up and play the angle a little bit better, because you can keep, you keep a second and third and maybe only 1 run scoring as opposed to 2 scoring. But you saw he got way too close to the wall. When it hit it, no chance, and no chance for a play at the plate either.
Andy LaRoche grounds one up the middle. This will produce the first out, but the runner goes over to third. 4-3 on the putout, 1 away here in the 9th inning. And that'll bring Ricardo Nanita to the plate. Dominic will be the left fielder to start the year. The thinking is, we mentioned yesterday, that Delman Young is going to come back and play right field eventually for the Phillies. That's the hope. So why move Dominic around? Although he can play both. He can play right, he can play left. And Charlie Manuel doesn't think that there's an advantage either way for him. Somebody asked him, what's his stronger position? And Sarge always says there is a difference.
Left field, they always say Sarge is one of them who talks about it's harder to play. But see, they're talking about that right now. I think what we were just talking, because Juan Samuel works with the outfielders, and that's a teaching moment there where you can get them aside and say, look.
Right side, good play by Mayberry, and now he'll run the ball to the bag.
You have to read the ball off the bat. It's not catchable.
And that's okay.
Right, you can't catch it. It's hit too hard and it's over your head. So now what do? Well, you get back further and you have a better angle. See, there's just, this game, it happens so fast, but you only have a split second to decide. Now, he's got no chance to catch this ball. So what he needs to do is be back a little further so that when it comes off the wall, he can play the carom and be under control as opposed to being right up against the wall. And the only way he's going to be able to play that thing if it hits him right in the chest.
Yeah, now the first run probably would have scored anyway.
Right.
The second run would have stayed at third.
Exactly. It had a second and third and one out. And who knows in a game what that situation could be.
Want to know the count to Lowen. Inside, 2 balls and no strikes. Serves it the other way. That'll drop for a base hit. So a run scores. Lowen stops at first. And it's now 10-4 in favor of the Blue Jays. So the Blue Jays have scored 4 runs in the last 2 innings against the Phil's bullpen. And Henry Blanco, who's been on base 3 times this afternoon, 2 singles, a strikeout, and a walk, will bat for the 5th time. He swings at the first pitch and he hooks it foul and out of play. A crowd that was 40,000 plus today. Just a great crowd for an exhibition game. Some of them, many of them, have started to head home, but just a great day to be at the ballpark.
Yeah, it was nice out here today for, in the sunshine, especially. People get a chance maybe to get some tickets they can't get during the regular season.
70,000 for the last 2 days here at the ballpark between the Phillies and the Blue Jays. One ball, 1 strike, the count to Blanco. Off speed pitch, 1-2. Off the glove of Ruiz. Lowen will go up to second. They've scored that a wild pitch. Swing and a miss, and the inning comes to a close. A strikeout for Minor. 7 hitters come to the plate in the inning for the Blue Jays. 3 runs score. On to the bottom of the 9th we go. The Phils down by 6. Easter Bunny to come to town. The young lady's enjoying a little mixing going on by Jimmy Rollins, who was in the control room throwing down the tunes. He wants everybody to do the robot cam. That's what he's got up on the board right now, the robot cam.
Mixmaster.
Mixmaster.
I think they used to call that. I think that was a nickname for our mayor, Michael Nutter, when he used to do those things. I believe he was called Mixmaster
really?
or something. Yeah, I read that somewhere.
Santa's doing a little sped up robot. Does he always have to wear red, you think?
That's a good. Paint the town red.
Somewhere around the city, Sarge is doing robot cam. Bottom of the 9th inning, John Mayberry leads it off.
Where do you think that is?
Somewhere around the ballpark. Somewhere around the vicinity. He's doing robot cam.
He might be over there mixing with Jimmy.
First pitch is over for a strike. It's 0-1. Stroman worked a 1-2-3 8th inning. Ground ball left to the mound. Nice play by LaRoche to make that play over to first. And one away here in the 9th inning. All right, Wheels, we've got 2 days before opening day. What are you looking forward to the most?
Real baseball. We can sit here in this role and actually analyze something. No, just to get the season started. You know the exhibition season's important. It is, because you have to do some things. Guys need repetition. They have to get their innings in. They have to get their at-bats in. But these games get really ugly after a while. And just to see a game where it really means something, and there's something about opening day in this sport anyway that we all love.
Michael Martinez, the batter. It's 0-1. And they make it 0-2. The count to Martinez. Outside 1-2. Well, this year when we open up the season in Atlanta, pregame show on PHL 17 is at 6:30, and then our telecast begins at 7, and we'll give you a little insight of what some of the folks are looking forward to when it comes to opening day and why. Ball's cracked right towards second. Velez makes a nice leaping grab for the second out. And 2 away.
He's a nice athletic player. We've seen this guy struggle with some ground balls. He's also played the outfield with the Giants. But whatever his height is, he needed every inch of it.
Inciarte is 1 for 2. He struck out in the 6th inning with the bases loaded, singled in the 5th.
He's got this within a run at one point, and then just been add-on time for the Jays. And they have to be very pleased with their offense going into the season.
Popped him up. Foul territory, third base side. LaRoche is over, puts it away, and there it is. The final out of spring training as the Blue Jays have defeated the Phillies 10-4 here this afternoon. And everybody now dusts themselves off and gets ready for the start of the 2013 season.